Hello there, dear participants of Georgia Youth Business Cup 2019. I have to inform you, sadly, that this is a new recording due to the previous technical difficulties we had to, reshoot specifically in this video. It will be coming in parts, then it'll be given into links. So once again, welcome for those who haven't been there with us. Sorry, once again, terribly sorry for those who were with us and didn't get the video of the proper quality. So once again, welcome. We're a little bit of a scratch and burn, but we're here and going. So first and foremost, there's a big thanks to PKF and also the Embassy of Republic of Lithuania as the main organizers of the event, as well as a big thanks to supporters, Lithuanian Development Cooperation and CBA Solutions. So first, as we have formalities out of the way, let's jump right into the action, shall we? So, as you already know or received previously, sent emails with information how to log in. What you need to do is focus on logging in, not registering, but actually logging in into your account. Simply typing in the email that you used for registration. In my case, I'm going into using a special demonstration account. Remember that the password is case sensitive. As we log in and jump into the SimFormer LMS, this is where we are going to be working with our game, specifically Georgia Youth Business Cup 2019. To access it, you have to click on it and then naturally click on Enter Simulation. As you enter the simulation, you gain an access to your company. Well, for those who are new, you will have to create a name, type in the name of your company, and then start the training, and you will end up in the following view. This is the main view of your business, the company that you will receive and you will have to manage. So specifically, there we are. As you can see, this is a browser-based solution. I would recommend to work with either Chrome or Firefox. These two work best. Now, if you're going into, if you're going to look for, if you're going to focus on using those browsers, definitely those are recommended. You could try using tablets, that's also a possibility, but take into consideration that the context and content is text heavy, so a bigger screen is recommended. Now, as you can see, this is your company, this is how you manage, and before we continue, we will first and foremost probably focus on what task is being given to you and what do you need to do in order to compete and in order to succeed. So as you can see, this is your company. Roughly what you need to focus on is management of your virtual company. So first you will have to create a certain hypothesis for business, and as you build your company, you build it out, as well as you experiment, execute strategies, grow and optimize, and then you will be competing against other participants, and you have to end up in top 30 in the ratings in order to proceed to the second stage and the final stage that will be happening on the 30th of September in Tbilisi. So before we carry on into the details, we have to go through the core mechanics, right? So SimFormer Business Simulation is a turn-based simulation. So recalculations happen once every 24 hours, and one real day equals 1 week. Don't worry reading, I will post these slides later on and you can review them as well. But the idea is quite simple. You receive information, you go through analysis, jump into certain action plan executed, type in all the decisions and get all the settings right. And then the recalculation happens during the night, roughly 4 to 5 p.m. a.m. Sorry, 4 to 5 a.m. depending on the location. And then the results are out. Now remember that recalculation and the system during recalculation takes in the decisions of all the participants, both you participating in the Georgia Youth Business Cup, as well as other participants, other students and businessmen that are training right now within the classical business simulation. The results will be out, and in some cases you will be competing, in some cases you will be as a partner. Then you will have to analyze the results, update your action plans, and wait for the recalculation. You will have the whole day for that. Now, before we go to retail, let's review the interface overall. So as you can see, the upper menus are for company management in general, and the lower menus, if you go into the specific business unit, the lower menu is specifically to manage the business unit that you are in, the one you went in deeper. What you need to go through, and as you can see, there's certain decisions already been made, but before we carry on, these are the tabs, the main tabs of the store. So the store is where the part of the management is made, and then the trade hall where the whole selling of the production that you have is being made. Before we carry on, let's ask ourselves what retail is all about. So first and foremost, in our simulation, retail is a possibility to buy from suppliers and then sell to the final consumers. You have a possibility to manage all 5 P's of the marketing: product, price, place, personnel, and promotion. So first and foremost, by combining these, you can create a marketing mix, a marketing strategy that works for you and which can be used to generate profit. In this specific situation, we will go through all 5 P's, or in other words, what you will be needing to do later on. First and foremost, if we talk about the products, we do have a lot of different products. We have around 25 industries, and naturally that concludes that we have a pretty huge amount of various different goods that can be used for retail trade. Question is, how do we differentiate? The answer is pretty simple. The main indicator is quality. It's a numeric value that goes from 1 to up to, could be 100, maybe 20, maybe 30, depends on what level of what technology level was developed, and as well as who managed to produce the higher quality. Truth is, the higher is the quality, the higher is the price for a specific good. That leads you to certain advantage if we compare you having a higher quality good to your competitor that has a lower quality good. At this point quality is 1, and you have a competitor that has a client that is willing to pay a certain price for this good. Let's assume you have a motorcycle that has quality 3. Now you have 2 pricing strategies at your disposal. One, you can ask for a higher price here because you have a motorcycle that has higher quality, or you can ask for the same price, but then most probably you will have a certain advantage because there will be more people willing to buy your production because the price is similar but the quality is higher. The advantage given to you by quality of the product you are selling is quite big. The difference is, however, what kind of pricing strategy you will choose. With a higher price, you're getting your profits from the margin. With a lower price, you're getting your profits from the volume of the sales. Which strategy you will choose, it's up to you. Now, another part of the P set is the place, specifically the location of the store. As we speak about the product and price, we naturally have to think about the buyer and how can we, to whom we're selling, right? So every city within our simulation has 5 districts: suburb, outskirts, residential area, city center, and trendy neighborhood. As we go closer to the city center, we see that people living in those districts are more quality sensitive, which means they're richer, they have more money, and they're not afraid to spend that money. But if we go out of the city, we see that level of income is lower, and naturally they're a lot more price sensitive rather than quality sensitive. So depending on what kind of product you're willing to sell, you have to choose either if that's economy range, something that is cheap for low quality, then you should be going to suburb or outskirts. If, however, you're going for a boutique of something of high quality and fashion, maybe going for city center, trendy neighborhood would be more recommended. Now, let's move on a bit. A second part of the place is the size. Now, the store size is essentially a very important aspect because if you see that there is a big amount of people coming into your store and the demand for your goods is growing, you need a bigger store. Bigger store means more possibilities. However, it also means more rent. So the price, for example, for a 100 square meter store could be quite huge. Therefore, you have to be sure that you have a pretty well working price and quality combination of the good, that you have a good product mix, you have good location of the store, and when you see that you have stable income, you have steady sales, then you can increase the store because that might be exactly what you need. Of course, the bigger the store, more visitors you can place in that store. More employees can work there and more inventories you can have. Once again, take into consideration the fact that you will require to pay more rent, and it can be quite high at some point. Another part which is also important is that we're talking about the personnel. The personnel is where you need to, in order to convert visitors to clients, you require salespeople. Therefore, you will need to hire employees and you need to check and choose the right salary for them. The final indicator at this point, if we're talking about the qualification, and we're talking about this part here, is that in order to ensure optimum quality service, you will have to choose proper salary. Depending on the district in which your store is, as well as what kind of goods you're selling and their quality and overall value, there will be a certain minimum required value. If you're below that, well, that won't be good for your sales. Also, you have to take into consideration the average city value is what is overall quality service within the city. So you have to take that into consideration. As you can see in this example, the qualification of personnel is quite low, and that will be problematic. The issue is that the higher is the customer satisfaction and sales, the more you will need to pay for your employees, right? The salaries have to be higher. The lower customer satisfaction and sales will end up as a result of low salary. So depending on where your store is, either that is once again, a fashionable district, or that those are suburbs and outskirts, you might need to readjust your personnel strategy as well. And the final and last P that you can manage is advertising, or in other words, promotion. What is important with the promotion? First and foremost, we are speaking about a possibility to work and take consideration, depending on how you mix all those five, beforehand, talking about advertising, what is important is at what level is your service quality. So as you see, service level here is an example, elite, that is the highest possible evaluation, which means your customers are happy and everything is great. Also, there's a popularity of the store, and depending on how well your store is faring, there will either be a high value or low, as well as a number of visitors. That means how many people per week come into your store. We have to take in consideration that visitors are not yet clients, and they will become clients only if your salespeople will be able to perform properly, you will have enough space in the store, as well as enough goods. And given that your proposition of quality and price combination of the goods you're selling is decent. Now, What is important that you can affect popularity and number of visitors, and these two indicators can be affected by advertising. A long-term effect is popularity of the store, and short-term effect is number of visitors. Therefore, by advertising, you can choose a combination of media channels. As a result, there will be the more media channels you use, and the bigger is the minimum amount of the budget of advertising. So also we have to take in consideration that the lower we go with the choices, well, the higher that minimum amount will have to be. Naturally, budget of the TV advertising is quite high. What is important in this situation is that you shouldn't overdo it with the advertising, because the more you advertise, the bigger is the number of visitors. And if you're not ready to accept that kind of flow, visitor flow, which means you have to have a store big enough, you need to have more than enough goods, and also you're required to have more than enough personnel to, well, do a conversion of the visitor into a client. So you have to take that in consideration, otherwise you will be losing money because you will be advertising, but you will not be able to use the opportunities the advertising will bring you. Let's go into the store and just review how the interface looks like. Now, as mentioned before, this is the store. This is, as you can see, the buttons suggest already what you can do actually here. I can see the store location, the city center, that's the region, the district, as well as the trade area, and as well as rent expense. In order to change that, either relocate or increase, I can do that here. The minimum step is 100 square meters, or you can jump into higher sizes, the bigger area, but take into consideration the rent as well. As I mentioned, 100 square meters is quite huge. And of course, you can change the district location as well. I'm not changing anything at the moment. Now, employees and salary are here as well. The system will give you necessary recommendations, either this number of employees, as you can see, 6, and this is the minimum that is required given the amount of goods I have, as well as the size of the store, and the flow of visitors, which is, well, at the moment we don't know yet, but the system simply recommends giving the size of the store, and as well as qualification of employees that should be. So in this case, it's a little bit lower than city average, and we can change that by clicking employees and salary here. Same as in shown in slides, we can input the values here or use the slider, and same here. Higher is the value, the higher is qualification, as you can see. The possibility to not increase the salary, but actually train people is done through the employee training. Click on employee training, and then you will see that there is a possibility to do a short-term investment into your employees in order to raise their qualification from persisting like this 6.3 into another training 6.5. The city average as well as required given here. Training can last up to 4 weeks. You can train all people or only part of them. Also, you can see how much it will cost for 1 week. Well, let's keep that happening. Why not? Finally, the advertising can be chosen here as marketing and advertising, or in the upper tab here. So as you can see, there is a popularity as well as media channels and how we choose them and how the minimum account increases, as well as city population and how much do we cover them with the number of contacts. Edit advertising conditions during whenever you make a decision, as well as stop advertising depending on the situation. And the final essential part is the trading hall. This is where your goods are, and this is what essentially you have to do when you need to do. Specifically, during today, you will need to buy and order goods in order for you to be able to sell them properly. Look, what you can see is the list of products as well as sales volume, and this is history of sales volume when you will have them. Purchase volume, this is where you can order a good, as well as you can see how many of the order you have received, as well as how many and how much of the goods you have in stock, their quality, brand value if there is such, purchasing price, as well as sales price, which you will have to input on your own. as well as city average values, which you can see how competitive your price is compared to what is within the city in average. Whenever you input a price, don't forget to click on the button Set Prices or press Enter. Now, as you can see, I can add new goods that I didn't have in the beginning. And what I need to do is simply choose one of the categories of the goods. Specifically, for example, here are the baby products and something that could go together with the toys. All I have to do is click on the highlighted product, and I will receive a list of possible suppliers. Among other information regarding city values in city stores and local suppliers, we will be able to see what kind of suppliers there are. There are two kinds of suppliers: independent suppliers that have a steady flow of goods with a steady price, with a steady quality, and in some cases limited orders. Or we have real people that are selling their production. As you can see, that is the maximum number this specific seller can sell us. The problem here is the quality is very great, but the price is pretty high. And if we see the city averages, we can see that this price, the costs, let's say, of this product would be strongly exceeding the average sales price, which means it's hardly worth buying this good because it will be difficult to sell. So as you can see, we have to take into consideration the purchasing price and then the selling price. That is where your profit is. In order to order a good, you have to click on either the same way as adding it, or, well, gloves and shoes, that's the same way, clicking on this icon, or clicking on the order. Well, at this point, as you see, this is blue, so this is a link. We can click here, we can see the suppliers of a specific good as they are here. All we have to do is click on select and input the value that we're willing to buy. Take note that there are additional terms in order to help you to avoid being scammed or being used if the price of the specific supplier is starting to increase or the quality begins to drop, or this could be a one-time purchase. Otherwise, this will be an active contract and you will be receiving this production every turn, every day. This is an active order, and when we close window, there we are. We can see the order that this is the production I should receive tomorrow, and that's because it requires a calculation for the purchase to happen. Now, there's a little task that you will have to go through, and I'd strongly recommend to analyze this, and if you'll be watching videos, most probably, take a pause before you look for the answers. Here's a question. These are 3 products that you're willing to sell. The question is, what kind of price would you choose? Where would you choose to sell it? And what kind of personnel qualification would you choose to sell it as well? As mentioned, please use pause button and try to answer that. Otherwise, to see either you hit the jackpot or not, were you correct or not. So, once again, press button here, pause button, and when you're done, we can go on and see what my recommendations would be. Now, as you can see, I would choose the lowest price for the lowest quality, naturally, because that is, compared to others, more matching, and at the same time, in order to sell that kind of price and quality combination of the good, I would be going to suburbs where the demand for low quality and low price is high. At the same time, personnel qualification can peak lower, because if you would choose to relocate stores, you will see that expectancy of service quality in outer districts of the city, like suburbs or residential area, are lower compared to trendy neighborhood or city center. Same goes for the product quality of 5. Naturally, you would choose a price that is fitting somewhere in the middle. Definitely the same goes for the location of the store, as well as personnel qualification, also somewhere in the middle. And finally, 10, well, self-explanatory. We go for the highest price, the trendy neighborhood, and highest qualification of personnel. This is obviously a certain market segmentation or certain segment that you're aiming at. And these, in order for these to work properly, you should combine all the marketing piece together. They should be matching each other at this point because they are tightly connected with each other. And if there is a mismatch, that will negatively affect the results. Now, let's jump to a second task, which is connections and scaling. If, let's say, you're willing to think through how you are planning, how much you're planning to sell, and this is especially important when you want to grow, let's say your marketing mix is pretty optimal and you're looking forward to grow, this is something you should be focusing on. So, once again, pause button please, try to make your guesses, and then unpause to check how close you were to the decisions. Ready? Here we go. Naturally, as you can see, these connect a little bit different indicators and variables that you can manage. First, depending on how much you want to sell, you will have to look to how much you want to purchase. Then naturally choose the right size of the store. In this case, if you have a smaller store, maybe you should increase it. If you have the same size of the store, keep it up. Personnel number, and as well as promotion advertising. How much should you advertise, right? Now, these involve the same piece, but maybe from a little bit different perspective. The idea is simple. If I want to sell 100, and there is a possibility to buy a little bit more, that's exactly what I want to do. Why? Because if I would sell 100 out of 100, that's great. But if I would then, what if I would have bought a little bit more, and in this situation, I would have sold more? So having a little bit extra is always recommended. Going for the size of the store, I could try to sell that in 100 square meters, but given that I'm willing to advertise, I'm willing to have the store a little bit bigger because not only my wares, but also salespeople and as well as visitors will need place. So spacious store is always good. Personnel. Now the number of personnel is questionable. You could go with 10, but I would go with 30 because they can fit into that kind of store. And most probably this is not the only good that I will be selling. And finally, advertising. As you can see, I'm going with the smallest amount. You could go with 50. It kind of depends on the size of the city, but in this specific situation, I would recommend to focus on a little bit smaller scale and then increase the advertising budget as it goes on. If you want to sell a little bit more, naturally you have to think through of getting the bonus, extra, let's say, not the bonus, but the extra reserve of the good, then going for the bigger store. Overdoing it with the size is also not recommended because, as you already saw, the rent increases quite drastically before you will have to cover the expenses, and that can be quite difficult. Now, naturally, having a little bit more people for the area is also recommended. We don't see any 100 or going for 200 for 1,000 square meters would be maybe overkill, and naturally a healthy consideration of the advertising budget. And for the maximum sales, yes, having additional extra place and size, at this case, going for 1,000 square meters, not recommended, so 10K is more than enough. 200 should do it, maybe 500. That's also a possibility. But in this case, I would like to overdo it. And then naturally, once again, 200,000 for the advertising. Well, once again, 1 million probably for the advertising budget would be more suitable for 100 square meters area. So that would be my recommendation, how to solve or try to connect these dots. In my opinion, in your case, you will have more than enough time to jump in and experiment and try out various things in this case. But either way, you have to understand that there are connections and all the P's are tightly connected with each other. So if you're missing out at least one of them, that might negatively affect the overall outcome of your marketing strategy. Now, what is essential in this point, and in this case, and very important, is that you have to take into consideration the timing in Sephora Business Simulation. Now, as you can see, the location and change of location, the size, as well as renting the store will happen during the same day or the same virtual week, right? Instantaneously. The same thing goes about the personnel. You will hire people instantaneously. But if you will, the goods you would order, as well as sales, they require additional recalculation. So, in other words, another turn. So, if you mess up the supply chain and you will run out of goods, you will require one recalculation to receive the goods and then another recalculation to do the sales, which means you will be losing 2 turns. Given the game has duration of 7 days, it is strongly recommended to focus on your operational activities, and supply chain is one of them. Now, look, this might look a little bit scary for some, but there's not much of something to be scared about. There are 5 marketing P's, and these are directly tied together. If you want to go through the explanation how connections work between the marketing P's, that is recommended. Try to experiment. Going big right off the bat is not recommended, especially if you don't feel comfortable. Sure, in order to proceed to the second stage of the cup, you need to be in top 30. But if you go bankrupt, you will hardly end up anywhere. So in this case, be careful in the beginning, and when you feel comfortable and you have pretty much clear understanding how everything works, it is strongly to recommended start growing. Either way, these are the variables when you manage your stores. So place, product, price, promotion, personnel, as well as the outcomes will be the popularity of the store, visitors, and then finally sales. That's exactly what you need. Retail is essential at this point because you have an opportunity to earn money fast. And it's quite critical at this point to get the grasp how retail works. Given that you have only 7 days to generate a pretty decent profit, this is exactly the industry you should be focusing into. Now, let's see what the retail tasks look like. So once again, the slides will be provided together with the video. What you need to go through is product. Get your marketing mix done. You have to choose the products that you can sell profitably, right? So with a proper price, as well as try to set an achievable and measurable sales goal. Price. Have to be competitive. You saw that there is a possibility to go over. There's a store, there's a possibility to see city average data. Naturally, try to jump in and try to be competitive at this point. Naturally, the place. If there is competition, think through what kind of product mix you're willing to sell, to whom, and maybe you should change the location of the store that you have received. Maybe a different district would be more suitable for you. Naturally, personnel has to work in tandem with the whole set, which means try to be careful with the qualification, as well as try to have an extra of the personnel. There will be, an extra helping hands will never hurt anyone, trust me. And promotion, advertise, but don't overdo it. Expenses and profit. Remember that this is business. You have to make profit to cover your expenses. Simple. Now, before we go to production, there's one thing that you have to know about retail. If there is no one here, so this is quite important, listen up. There's a possibility to review the market info of a specific product in a specific city. If you click on the product link here, you will have a new window where you can see the city, the industry, the specific industry or category of the goods, and a specific good. What you will see then is the market development index, how much competition there is, and this is low compared to, let's say, AAA, which is high. The market volume, that's how many bags is being bought during a week, which is in this case not that much. And also you can see the local suppliers. The local suppliers are sellers of production of the lowest quality for the lowest price. So these are computer generated, as you will never enter absolutely empty market. The stores show the prices or averages of other players. For example, like this guy here. So this here, we can see that how an average, how much he sells. What's the store size? Well, this is where the location, where that store is, and what is the price that he's asking and what quality he or she is selling. So in order to understand more about your competition, this report is something you are definitely going to be willing to check out. Now, let's jump into production part. Why production is important? Well, A, you already have 2 factories that you can be using, and B, that will help you produce goods that you'll be able to sell and you will be independent, right? Otherwise, if you're buying from someone else, you might be dependent on their mistakes or their quality or their pricing. If they increase prices, that will decrease your profitability, and that's quite an issue. What do you need to produce goods in order to sell them to the buyers? You require raw materials, equipment, personnel, and know-how. Then you will have goods you'll be able to sell for your own stores or someone else's stores, as well as to warehouses as a wholesaler. Remember, wholesaling is happening between only real people. Computer-generated buyers are not present in wholesaling. Now, what does level of technology mean? A level of technology, specific level of technology that you have integrated into your business unit, is a limiter. If you have, for example, here we have a 4th level of technology used, or let's say integrated or installed in the production facility, the maximum quality of the production, or maximum quality of a motorcycle we produce, cannot overcome 6.06. That's it. There's nothing we can do. Simply, we don't know how to produce high quality. Now, there is a certain moment which is very important. A level of technology has direct impact on the quality of equipment you have to use in the factory. Naturally, that will affect the level of employee qualification, because if their employees have qualification that is below the quality of the equipment which is required, then they don't know how to use that equipment. Therefore, it is recommended not to go below what is required. Naturally, as a result, you can use quality of materials. You're not that limited in this case, because it can be higher, it can be lower. How does that work? Well, let's take a look. In this case, it's definitely a certain bonus you could receive for producing goods if you have higher quality of equipment and qualification of employees in this case, but that means also additional costs, as well as using quality of materials which are higher, which is required in order to receive the maximum quality. The problem with this build is that you still will produce only 6.6, that's the maximum quality of a motorcycle you can receive, and the problem is also that the costs will be pretty high. Even if you do this kind of combination, you will still end up in the same situation. So the question is, why should you overinvest into quality of materials? An optimal solution, if you're willing to go or to get the highest quality of product, final good, is to go with the orange, or the third line, going really regarding requirements according to technology. But there's also a possibility to choose another path. You can choose the same quality of equipment, and naturally the requirement for a level of employee qualification will be the same in match with level of technology. However, you can use lower quality of materials. That will allow you to produce higher quality than zero, but at the same time save on costs. Roughly, what do you have to take in consideration? That quality and costs, they come together, right? The higher is the quality, the higher are the costs, because it kind of takes time and money to produce high quality goods. The technology level is something that limits you to reach high quality. Then going over with the costs, but without being able to reach high quality, would be, well, kind of stupid, and definitely not recommended, because that's not efficient use of your money. So take that in consideration when you're planning and managing your production facilities. Timing. Timing in production is quite similar, but there are certain differences. Equipment can be bought at the same virtual week, personnel hired at the same virtual week. But same as in retail, purchases are completed only during recalculation, and naturally the production works the same way. You will be able to produce goods only when you have all necessary raw materials. During the calculation, the outcome will be calculated. Let's take a look at the interface of the factory, shall we? We go back to your company management screen. You can actually access it by My Company and Enterprises as well. And when we jump into the clothing factory, we can see all the things we have mentioned before. So one additional thing, various factories have different amount of specialization. Some produce only one good, some can produce different goods with the same equipment, but either same raw materials or different raw materials. Either have additional quality modifiers, because that's like, a leather clothing, or you can jump into producing from gloves into baseball caps and use actually even smaller amount of raw materials that you have. In order to be able to order different raw materials, you have to change the specialization and change the specialization and then make an order of that different raw material that you require. Afterwards, you will be able to jump and switch the specializations as you see fit. There will be no limitations here. Difference in size. Now, you can expand the factory, but differently from the retail, differently from stores. This takes time and it is quite expensive, but this is more of a like one-time investment. Once you build it, you build it. You're not paying rent. You have more expenses on the energy and so forth, but that's a different question. So, but take into consideration that a very big, huge build-up will take time, and that's something you don't want. Well, or you want to be very careful and very good with your planning, because you have only 7 turns ahead of you. Once again, make a choice, then click Change Subdivision Size, and you will have the result. The result, if changed, will be seen here. Equipment. Something that you require. Just because you have 100 workplaces doesn't mean you will have to fill them up right out straight. You can do that later. As you can see, equipment quality is seen here. What is required can be seen here, required by technology to be precise. Also, equipment wear and tear is also present, so be careful. As I mentioned, equipment will be bought during the same virtual week, which means if you choose to buy right off the bat, what you will see is how a certain amount of equipment will affect the final quality. So a certain arithmetical average will be calculated. In one case, that's good to have high quality of the equipment, but take in consideration that will directly affect the requirement of the employee qualification. That means higher salaries. So don't overdo it. And here we see that everything is pretty okay with the employees. Now, it's up to you how much equipment to buy, but depending on how much equipment you have, you should definitely fill all the workplaces with employees. Otherwise, the productivity will begin to, suffer. So in this case, staff will not be using all the equipment that they have, or they simply will try to use all the equipment, but there will be not enough people. So same as in stores, employees and salaries, the same button, as well as training. Now, a supply chain is provided here. As you can see, the green car is select supplier, yellow is to move the product to a warehouse, and you can build a warehouse and then clear warehouse, but that's mean you're throwing away. So you have to be careful here. In order to make an order, or open up supply window, click on the green car, and there we go. And we can even see active orders already. Works the same way as in the store. take into consideration that there is a certain amount that is required given to the amount of workplaces that we have, as well as the amount of employees. So please do be careful in this given situation. Having a little bit extra is good. Having a little bit too small is dangerous. Also, taking out how much you have. The reason we have two suppliers here, as you can see, is that I want to increase the quality of the already present raw materials. Thus, I'm purchasing raw materials of higher quality. Because in the end, when everything will be shipped into the stock, there will be a mathematical average calculated both regarding the costs and quality overall. And quality in this case of raw materials would directly affect the quality of production. So as you can see, the current quality of production, the maximum quality of production with the technology level 5 is 8.10. At this point, what I already have is a certain set of quantity, and you all will have quantity of production, maximum production. Let's say that's a small gift to you, so you'll be able to sell something to someone, and this is how it comes. Here, produced per week, you can see how much you produce per week. Now, because this is the first turn, there is no data yet at the moment. Don't forget to go to Sale tab and check out how you can change the price as well as distribution policy. And in this case, I'm selling only to my company, which means my stores and my warehouses will be the only ones that will be able to buy from me, because that will be a proposition visible only to them. If you're going to any customer, be aware that the same as in the store, you can see a market report as you click on the product or the name. And differently from marketing city retail, you'll be directed into marketing products. And this is where you can choose the product and see what kind of retailers are there present. So in this case, we can see that there's a lot of competition. And maybe it would be more efficient to have a self-sufficient company that would be selling everything to yourself rather than going and trying to compete with other real people here, because that might be quite difficult at this point. So technology level is something that you already have pre-installed, so that's level 5. As you can see, the maximum quality you can produce is at 8.10, but also a higher level of technology gives you an opportunity to produce more, so it increases the output bonus of the production. So in this case, something that's pretty good. Buying technologies could be available. They might show up if someone will be selling them. Take into consideration that their price is pretty high, so you should have enough cash for that. And everyone here will end up using 10 million. Every company will have only 10 million, so be careful there. All right. So to sum it up, production is easier. Compared to marketing, I think it's definitely easier because depending on how you plan it and how you execute it, the outcome is pretty clear. Sure, selling might be a little bit more complicated, but if you're building a self-sufficient company, a vertical integrated company, so you have your cloth, right, with the weaving mill where you produce your cloth, and then you can open it up as a sales position only to your own companies, and then make an order from your weaving mill into your clothing factory and buy that cloth and then use it to produce your own goods. You will be in control of all your costs, and also you'll be in control of your output as well as, well, profit as well. If you will be buying most of the products from others, it's also a possibility. But if there will be any changes there, any mistakes there, or any competition will be buying all the production, because real participants of the market, real players that are out there, they might make mistakes. They have a limited amount of goods. Definitely, that is a risk you have to take into consideration. As you can see, there's size, raw materials, equipment, personnel, technology, price, as well as advertising. These are variables that you can manage and, as a result, receive certain outcomes as quantity, quality, brand, and sales. Brand will be, specifically, brand is something that is possible to develop as you are the owner of the good, you're the producer of the good. But take into consideration this is expensive and takes some time. Also, it has to be limited to certain geographical area. Let me show you that by going into the office, because that feature is available only from the office. Office is something that is necessary for the administration of all the business units in a specific location, either a country or region of the country. And in order to create brand value, you have to go to marketing and advertising, and then choose the product and choose the city, because you have an office. I have an office in Spain, so this is the only, say, country I can advertise in. But the problem is that if, let's say, I choose a region, as you can see, the costs of advertising can be quite high, and the more media channels I use, the more expensive it becomes. So I'm not sure if I want to do that just right like this off the bat. So once again, that's quite expensive. You have to be careful there. But office, if we go a little bit deeper, is also quite important, because the more people you have under your control, the bigger is the workload. And the efficiency of the office, negative efficiency of the office workload, and efficiency of the overall of the office will negatively impact all the subdivisions under its management. So you want to have office at 100% work efficiency. Trust me, the office workload shouldn't exceed 100%. Same as in a factory, you can buy computers because they are needed for employees to work. Same as in a factory or in a store where you have employees and you have to work with them. The higher is the quality of equipment, the higher is the requirement for qualification of employees. Also, you will get various indicators regarding your choices or certain recommendations. To follow them or not is up to you. Now, the production tasks are always also something you should be thinking of as what are necessary. One, you have to know what are your requirements of the technology, right, regarding the equipment and personnel. You have to take care of your equipment, buy additional equipment, think through what kind of quality you want to buy, as well as think through how will you raise the qualification of the personnel if needed. Raw materials will allow you to produce a variety of different qualities of the goods, from the maximum to a minimum that is available for technology. It is definitely recommended to not overgo and not overstock of various goods, specifically raw materials, because A, it costs additional money, B, you will not be necessarily fast enough to change your huge amount if, let's say, you decide to increase the quality of production you want to achieve. Then the previously stocked goods, raw materials, their quality might become an issue. Once again, size is good, but take into consideration your plans. Will you be willing to increase or not? Will that give you enough time? And then advertising, once again, it's possible, but it's expensive, it takes time. And also be competitive with your pricing. Now, the office. As you already heard a small introduction, don't forget, the office is quite essential, not only for growth of business, not only to manage the company, but also to grow the business, as well as to create brand value. If you want to open a new subdivision, either in the same territory, you have an office, then it's okay. But if you want to open, let's say, a store in a different country, you will need to open an office in that specific country, and then you'll be able to open a store. As you can see, it is quite important to have not only for expansion, but also take into consideration that growing business, if the more people you hire, the bigger are the stores, the bigger has to be the office. Otherwise, there will be an issue with the management of the overall efficiency of the office and naturally then the efficiency of the whole business line as such, which is quite painful. Now, new subdivisions can be opened by clicking Create Subdivision. Well, obviously self-explanatory here. As you create a subdivision, you will have to choose one. As you can see, there are a lot of possibilities here, but I will not be going into them today. I will be explaining about them tomorrow. This is where we will be going a little bit deeper. But the office is something you will have to open first if you're going to go into a different country. As you can see, there are a lot of countries. Spain is already taken because we have an office here. And you can carry on, let's say it's Lithuania, and we can carry on and open a new store here. And a new office, either in Vilnius, Kaunas, or Klaipėda, one of those. And if we go into Vilnius, we choose the size, and we finally have create a subdivision. And there we go, we have an office. An office has increased and rented the same way as a store, right at the same virtual week, which means almost instantaneously. Be careful with your money. You might overexpend, so you have to be a little bit more careful. Now, does it work? This is a critical question you should be asking yourself in this given situation. One is we always recommend to look into the lean principles for startups in our game because that will allow you to optimize expenses and ask yourself, let's say, will that work or not? We recommend a more scientific approach on making your decisions, and this is how a decision-making process should be going. First and foremost, there's a certain hypothesis, the market hypothesis you create, right? An idea, a business idea, right? You find certain goods and maybe you think you should actually make a plan and execute it to make money. During a recalculation, you will receive, after recalculation, you will receive the results, a certain market response. And this is where you will have to evaluate and measure the results and think through what went wrong and what did work and what didn't work. Naturally, after analyzing the results, you have to change and adapt. Therefore, you will have to update market hypothesis, update your plans, execute them, and wait for another recalculation to see the results. That way, the measure, evaluate and measure is probably one of the most critical points here because it will allow you to have a very clear understanding what went wrong and what didn't. Strongly recommended to go through this specific setup. Another part is you should ask yourself, right? Does it work? Was your course of action successful? Was it profitable? Yes, no, why? What could be done to improve the performance? Always remember, this is business. At one point, it might look a bit complicated, but in reality, it's very simple. You have to generate revenues, right? You have to have some sales in order to cover the expenses. Otherwise, you will not have profit, rather the loss. So sales are equals the revenues. Don't forget that if you're buying from one of your factories and buying the production to your store, that will not count as overall revenue because that's inside circulation of goods and money. You have to manage your expenses as well as take the profit into priority when you're calculating things. Because if you are not getting profit, your company will not, well, survive. So that is quite important at this point. Now, to sum it up, you have, well, three types of business units at the moment, something we could call a business line you can work with. And it's quite essential that at this point, you have to ensure that all the managerial decisions are made, which means you have enough supplies, right? You have enough goods for selling, you have enough people, and all the requirements are met. And this, at the same time, it is strongly recommended, A, to gather information, to know more about the world you're in, as well as the market situation, as well as what kind of things you can produce if you want to produce, what kind of things you can sell to whom, and how much you can make. As well, find the optimum marketing mix depending on the market you're in, as well as depending on what kind of goods you can buy. and for how much you can sell. And also maintain the production. Having the goods there in your hands will allow you to be more sustainable, to be more self-sufficient, which means you're not that dependent on other suppliers. The outcome is a first step to successful business. And that's exactly what you want if you want to end up in those 30 top participants. How exactly you will be evaluated? Well, let's take a look. You can go to ratings, and those ratings will allow you to see. Now, these are empty, naturally, but these ratings of your performance, overall performance during the game as is. The performance indicator is the final one that will be calculated. 50% of the performance indicator is made of cumulative profit. It will be calculated from the beginning to the end. Profit is a plus. Loss is a minus. Overall sum will be showed. Cumulative revenue is something that will give you an opportunity. It will be calculated 30% and also a chance to increase performance indicator by additional 30%. And then finally, the asset value of your company. It will be taken from the latest turn. So every turn, the rating will be updated and you will be able to see your results. Now, as mentioned before, these are the tasks for you as a manager, but also as an entrepreneur. You have to think through and consider your possibilities, your plan of actions, and see how you can do it. I will answer questions a little bit later, either tomorrow after the stream. Hopefully we have all the issues with the sound sorted out and I will be able to answer them. You can leave them either in a Facebook group or within the live chat that will be available during the stream, and I will try to answer them in the end of the stream. Now, good luck, and I will see you tomorrow.